right, hey everyone, it's Paul C. Tarina here to talk to you today about some things that you can do in preparation for your holistic health journey with us. And really excited to bring this information to you today. Today we're going to talk about knives, cookware, and containers, and this all revolves around food and food preparation. And why this is important, you know, we see all of us being a part of this empowered community, and we have pockets of people all over the world. And these empowered people don't just understand the importance of real food, they also understand the importance of having non-toxic alternatives and solutions for the home. And this empowerment of ourselves leads to sharing, and it leads to empowering other people. That's kind of our cheesy vision. So it's not just enough to understand what real food is and how to implement real food. It also is extremely important to understand how to prepare your food properly and with the least toxins possible. And I think it's also good to go over some of our core values. So we have a lot of different values that we're constantly honing all the time, but these are the ones that I feel like kind of stand out based on what we're going to cover today. So number one, we're all about freedom. Freedom that comes from understanding, implementing, and experiencing what we call our foundations for health. And that's freeing because conventional wisdom's view of what we need to do to be healthy is complicated and it doesn't work, okay? We're all about simplicity and elegance. We're all about keeping things very simple. We want to make these health habits things that we can implement all day, every day, and it's not so complicated that it keeps us from doing it. We're all about constant learning and experimentation. So we have to go into all this new information with the mindset of, I'm learning a new skill, and this is a great and wonderful thing, and it's going to feel uncomfortable at first, but as you continue to hone that skill, it gets more and more comfortable. And you start to develop this honed intuition about what works for you. It's a really beautiful process. And so we're also all about enjoying the journey and enjoying the process and understanding that there is no end destination when it comes to health. This is stuff that we're going to be experimenting with and tweaking and honing for the rest of our life. And that's a great and beautiful thing. And you're doing it with a lot of people that agree on the same principles. We're all about practicing love and kindness to ourselves and to other people because all of us are doing the best we can with what we have and what we understand. Everybody is trying to make themselves happy and healthy. A lot of people just don't have the right information, don't have the information that we have. We're all about making this work in a modern lifestyle, so we do allow for some modern conveniences. And very, very important to understand there is no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. We want to strive for perfection and at the same time understand we're probably never going to be perfect, and we want to learn from our less than perfect outcomes because there is no such thing as failure. I'm either getting what I want or I'm getting feedback to tell me what to change in order to get what I want. Okay? So when we look at this knife set here, to me, this looks really complicated. All right? It looks stressful. And it's funny, knowing what I know now, like when I remember just seeing knife sets like this at friends' houses and at my sister's place, and it's just like, I don't even know what knife to pick out of this to use, you know? So if you talk to any experienced chef, then you'll find that most people that do a lot of food preparation usually only have two knives. And out of those two knives, you're typically going to work with one of them the majority of the time. All right? So the two knives that you need to have on hand are going to be an 8 to 10 inch chef knife and then a small paring knife. And that's about it. And I don't ever use my paring knife. Like I almost always use my chef knife and a pair of kitchen shears. So the typical choice between good quality chef knives, and you want something that's good quality. You don't want a KitchenAid chef knife or what was one of those ones that I came across in Bed Bath & Beyond the other day that's like one of those just like really inexpensive one, but you know what I'm talking about. They almost feel like they're stainless steel or something like, or some kind of aluminum or something. You want to choose something between a German and a Japanese knife. Now the German knives tend to be a little bit thicker, a little bit sturdier, and the Japanese knives tend to be a little bit thinner and a little bit lighter, and they have different angles for their blades. So when choosing your chef knife, you want to make sure that your chef knife feels good in your hand, and you also want to make sure that it's balanced, meaning that the blade is balanced, so that when you're holding it in the place that you need to hold it, it feels balanced, and you'll understand what I'm talking about when you start to hold some of these knives. Now, any chef knife that comes from a good quality company that knows what they're doing with this kind of stuff is always going to make the blades balanced anyway. So the way that you figure this out, and by the way, we have a couple of pictures up here. These are going to be our top recommendations. I would say, and these aren't what you're limited to. I just, based on experience, these are our top recommendations. So if you want to go with a Japanese knife, which I love, then I would go with a global knife, all right? So globals have everything from 8-inch to 10-inch. This is my baby. This is my 10-inch chef knife. I think it's a G16 and absolutely love it. I've had it for 5 years and I don't think it's ever gonna go away. And then for the German knives, we'd recommend the Henkels, the 4-star Henkels, and they have 8 to 10-inch chef knives as well. Now, you do want a large chef knife. So this looks kind of big, but it's also light and easy to use. And you want a large chef knife because you want to be able to cut through big things. So if I have a big head of cauliflower or a cabbage or even something like a watermelon, I want that blade to go across that whole thing. And once I learn how to use the blade, like I can use it to cut small items as well. But you definitely don't want to have a small chef knife because then that limits the things that you can cut. All right, so we mentioned before, you want to go based on feel. And so what we'd recommend is going to a place like Bed Bath & Beyond where they have a good selection of knives and going in and holding a couple different knives. I'd recommend holding some global knives. I would, again, start at the 8-inch size and then also venture into the 10-inch and see how that feels in your hand. And then I would also venture into the German knives. And that would be the Henkels, the 4-stars. And they may have some other selections there. If you have someone that's very knowledgeable about knives, they may make some other recommendations. But that's how you're going to understand which one feels better to you. And again, if it's a good quality knife, it's going to be balanced automatically. Make sure that you ask about a sharpener that's specific to those knives because German and Japanese knives have different angles on their blades. So this is a sharpener designed specifically for a global knife. And you want to make sure that you get the sharpener because one of the keys to having a good knife and keeping it for a lifetime is keeping it sharp. So I typically sharpen my knife after every 3 uses, somewhere around there, or if I feel it dull, somewhere before that, and literally takes less than 5 minutes to sharpen it. So just understand that it is worth investing in a good knife. All right, this is my baby. I use it every single day. As a real foodie, you're going to use your knife every single day to prep food, or most days to prep food. So that means that it's something that you need to invest in. You need to treat it with respect. You need to make sure that you have a good sharpener, and you need to keep it sharp and clean and treat it like your little baby, because that's what it is. All right, you're gonna develop a relationship with this thing, and you're gonna keep it for a very, very long time. Okay. Now you also want to learn how to use your knife properly. And so we'd recommend watching some instructional videos. We love Stella Culinary. There's probably a bunch of other YouTube versions of this stuff out there. But we will provide some links with Stella Culinary. It goes from everything on how to set up your cutting board, to how to hold your knife, to how to chop different vegetables, to how to get different cuts like julienne cuts and things like that. So it's a really comprehensive list of videos, but we'd recommend starting with a few basic ones, and we'll tell you which ones those are. Okay? So remember we mentioned before, we're all about learning these new skills and experimenting and honing. And so this may be something that feels completely foreign to you. And if so, that's perfectly fine. We all started somewhere. And now I'm very comfortable with my knife. You know, I love it. I love it. You know, I look at it like I compare it to CrossFit. When I go into CrossFit, there's skills that I'm not great at. So I have to work really hard to get better at those things. And that's a fun experience for me. That's a fun process because I'm learning and I'm evolving. Same thing with any of these skills that you're going to learn with a knife. You know, you're going to start out new, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but that should be a little bit exciting. Take your time with it. Try to do it right, and over time you'll get better and faster, and it's going to feel more and more comfortable. Okay? Now, when it comes to a cutting and carving board, again, we want things to work. Like we want simplicity and elegance. And it kind of drives me nuts to see people with these little flimsy, you know, collapsible cutting boards that are like this big, and you can't really do anything on it. You want room to work. So I'd recommend getting a big carving board. We recommend this one from XOX. I wonder if they say that. XO. I don't know. So anyway, this big carving board from XOX, it's great because it's really big. You have a lot of room to work. It's got rubber handles. It sticks to the counter really well. You can flip it over on sides, so if you're worried about cross-contamination, you want to do your meats on one side and then flip it over and do your vegetables without washing it, you can do that. And it's got these great little handles so that you can carry it and take your prepared food and put it into a cooking dish or into some other containers or something like that. And it's very durable. It's supposed to be non-porous and doesn't absorb smells and things like that. But the big takeaway from this is you want to have a large space to work on, all right? We don't want one of those little mini cutting boards. If you're going to take one of those on a camping trip or something like that, that's perfectly fine. So I would recommend getting a decent size cutting board, okay? Now let's talk about cookware. When it comes to cookware, we want to understand things that come into contact with our food, especially when it gets hot, we need to understand that that could be a potential problem, because our digestive tract is our first interaction with the outside world, or one of our first interactions. This is one of the few places that things can actually get inside our body by crossing that gut barrier. And that gut barrier is designed not to let through certain toxins, but some of these modern toxins, like the chemicals that we're exposed to, the body doesn't really understand how to not let those things in. And so we want to be aware of the things that come into contact with our food, especially things that are cooking our food, because the heat actually exaggerates this process of getting toxins into our food. So the worst cookware ranked is going to be number 1, Teflon and other non-stick items. Okay, so Teflon has been infamous for PFOAs and other very persistent chemicals that have been found in the tissues of most human beings. And if you ever notice a non-stick pan, you see little chips and places that it's missing. Where do you think those things went? Well, someone ingested that stuff. So Teflon is extremely toxic, and because Teflon is so toxic, I would also be very cautious and hesitant about anything else that's claimed to be non-stick, except for maybe ceramic or enameled cookware. All right. Also, aluminum is not very good to cook with, because aluminum is problematic inside of our body. And again, if we're cooking on aluminum, then that aluminum is leaching into the food that we're cooking. And then copper is not going to be beneficial either. Now, copper in very, very small amounts and balanced with other nutrients is going to be beneficial inside our body, but we get plenty of that from the food that we eat. Excess copper can be extremely toxic to the body. So those are things that we want to avoid. Now, the best cookware that we can have access to is going to be, number 1, top pick is going to be enameled ceramic or glass. Okay, so probably not going to be doing a lot of cooking with glass, but when we're talking about stovetop type cooking or oven cooking, we're looking for enameled or ceramic cookware. Right? When you're looking into these different items, because there's different levels of quality of all this stuff, make sure that the manufacturer is claiming that this is non-toxic and lead-free and toxin-free and things like that. Okay? Another good option is going to be cast iron. If you have a well-seasoned cast iron skillet or Dutch oven, anyone that has experience with that stuff understands, like, those work really, really well. They do require some maintenance, so every time you use them, you have to wash them a certain way and make sure you reseal them. So that can be a little bit time consuming. Stainless steel is another good option, but stainless steel, you have to understand how to heat it up properly, how to oil it, how to make it non-stick, because otherwise stuff tends to stick to it really easy and it becomes really difficult to clean. So what we'd recommend is, it is an investment again, and you may have to take this in chunks. We'd recommend starting with something that's like enameled and ceramic. Now, thinking back to this whole idea about simplicity and elegance, I use one thing to cook almost all my food, and it's a big 12-inch skillet with a lid. I rarely venture into anything else. Sometimes I'll use my crock pot to make stock or stews or legumes or something. I use my Instant Pot maybe to make some potatoes and rice. But for the most part, everything that I cook in this one big skillet. Now, if I had a really small skillet, then I could only cook certain things in that small skillet, right? So there's no point, in my opinion, in having like a 6-inch skillet, an 8-inch skillet, a 10-inch skillet, and a 12-inch skillet. Just get something big, and you can always cook small stuff in that big thing, but then you can also cook big stuff, okay? So we recommend having a large skillet, 10-inch to 12-inch, ideally with a lid, because lid gives you some versatility. Some things you may not want to use the lid, so you don't have to, but if there's things that you want to use the lid and you don't have a lid, then that's a problem. So we'd recommend getting something that has a lid. Then you also want something that's a little bit deeper, so something that looks like a Dutch oven or a saucepan with a lid. And then you want something that's good for heating up liquids. So I think that's where stainless steel should come into play, is having some good stainless steel saucepans, maybe just one decent sized saucepan that you can heat up, boil some water, heat up some leftover coffee, heat up some stock, heat up some soup and stuff like that. And then you want things for baking. So maybe some glass baking dishes or some stainless steel cookie sheets or baking dishes, okay? So recommended for cookware, again, this is going to be an investment, but once you get some of this stuff, you're going to keep it for a lifetime. I have Extrema cookwares, ceramic cookware, and absolutely love it. It's a stone cookware with a ceramic coating, and they built this company based on being non-toxic and having this alternative for people that cared about this kind of thing. So I love Extrema ceramic cookware. If I had some extra money and I want to get some extra things, then I might venture into enameled cast iron. So enameled cast iron, there's some really good things. That's the La Creuset versions that are out there. Also, the Lodge cast iron series have some enameled cast iron cookware. And so with those enamel cast iron cookware, you can get like a decent sized 10 or 12 inch skillet with a lid. I like the one that has both handles on the sides. I don't like the one that has the big long handle because that can get caught when you're walking by the oven and you can knock it over. And then also like a Dutch oven. Now, what's great about all these cookwares that we just mentioned, the Extrema ceramic and the enameled cast iron, is they're built to be put in the oven. So if you want to do something that's on top of the stove and then it's a recipe that requires you putting it in the oven, you can do that. Then we recommend having a stainless steel saucepan for heating up water and liquids and reheating soups and stews and things like that. And then maybe some glass baking dishes and some stainless steel cookie sheets, okay? Trying to keep it super simple, right? You need just one skillet that's large with a lid. You need one deeper, thing that's like a Dutch oven, and then maybe something for heating up water, and then something for baking stuff in the oven, like baking your bacon, which you'll learn about in the future. All right? If you have any questions, let us know. Now, also, thinking about things that come in contact with the food, we want to think about our utensils. So ideally, again, we're moving away from these toxic things, and I'm just not sold on certain plastics. We're not sure about silicone and nylon. We are sure that wood and bamboo are going to be safe bets. So I would say use a wood and bamboo spatula and spoons and things for stirring and cooking and all that kind of stuff. You can use stainless steel. I think stainless steel could be harsh on some cookware. Most of this ceramic and enameled cookware, they actually tout that it's scratch resistant and that this isn't going to mess with it at all. But that would be another option, would be stainless steel utensils. The thing that appears to be the safest out of all the plastic type things is going to be silicone. And it has a really, really high heat point. So you could venture into some silicone covered stainless steel utensils, but I'd say your safest bet is going to be either wood or bamboo. Okay. Other kitchen gadgets that you want to consider. Number one, kitchen shears. Like I told you before, I use my baby right here for 99% of all the cut work that I do in the kitchen. And then I have a solid pair of OXO kitchen shears, which are just awesome. Like they'll cut through meat, they'll cut through bone. You can cut produce with them. It has a little herb stripping, thing on it, so that if you have fresh herbs, you can strip the herbs off the tough stems. The blades come apart so that you can clean it really easy, and the blades have this really, really small micro serration, which makes it easy to cut through just about anything. And I use those on a daily basis. So I'd say some kitchen shears would be a really good investment. And then also, over the long term, and again, you're probably going to have to make a little wish list and just add to it over time. You probably want to have a stock pot. So I'd say something about like a 20-quart stock pot, which is about this big. You want to have a digital thermometer for cooking your meats in the oven or even on top of the stove. You want to have a slow cooker or a crock pot. We recommend the ones from Hamilton Beach. We love those. And then, like we mentioned before, some stainless steel cookie sheets or baking sheets or maybe some glass baking dishes. A lot of us in the beginning did use, or maybe we still use a little bit, tin foil to wrap some of our baking sheets, especially when we're making bacon and some oven baked things. And I think, we've already talked about aluminum not being something that's great inside the body. I think in the beginning, to allow for some modern conveniences and easy cleanup, we were doing a lot of aluminum foil, but I kind of moved away from that and I used nothing but stainless steel baking sheets. But that might be something, that you can kind of mess with in your transitional phases if cleanup and that kind of thing tends to be a little bit too cumbersome, okay? But ideally, you'd want to move towards glass baking dishes and stainless steel cookie sheets and stuff. So we're going to have links to all these things on Amazon or wherever else you may be able to get it, and so you'll have a good resource for all that stuff. Something else, again, to add to your wish list would be an Instant Pot pressure cooker. So this is a digital pressure cooker. Saves a lot of time. I use this pressure cooker to make most of my starches, so my potatoes and my rice. Sometimes I'll make my beans with it, and I always use it to make my stock. It cuts, typically to make stock, it takes you 24 hours to simmer a batch, and in an Instant Pot, it takes you 4 hours. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about storage containers. So again, we're talking about things that come into contact with the food. And so I don't think it's necessary that the entire container be 100% glass or 100% stainless steel, although that's great. What we really care about is what's coming into contact with the food, especially if we're going to heat it up. All right, so I am a huge fan, and most of our people are huge fans of mason jars, wide mouth mason jars. So we all have wide mouth, like just hordes of them. pint mason jars, quart mason jars, and also half-gallon mason jars. And that's where I store most of my food. All right, now some things are going to lend themselves a little bit better to like a wider base, wider dish. So there's plenty of glass containers on Amazon, at Walmart, at Target that you can get that have the locking lids. You know, we like those glass lock versions. And then there's also some stainless steel options out there. Lunchbox makes a really good one, and we'll make sure to reference that with some links. But if you're looking for versatility and simplicity and elegance and things that you can use to heat up in the microwave, then we recommend glass. So again, mason jars, wide mouth mason jars, always get the wide mouth. And then also different glass containers with locking lids. And you can find a lot of different specials on Amazon and other places for those things. So a lot of people ask us, you know, what about plastic containers? Well, again, if we're thinking about food coming into contact with something, especially if it gets hot, I think plastic containers are okay to store cold foods. And so for instance, I'll use these freezer safe quart containers to store my stock and freeze my stock, but I won't reheat my stock in those quart containers because they're plastic. I'll actually let it thaw out, and then I'll put the stock into like a saucepan, a stainless steel saucepan or a glass mason jar, and heat it up in the microwave or something. And then if you have leftover plastic containers, again, I think those are okay to use in your transitional phase as you're slowly starting to revamp things. You can use those to store food in the refrigerator, but I would never put plastic in the microwave. Same thing with Ziploc bags. I'm a big fan of Ziploc bags, especially when we go camping. I'm a big fan of using Ziploc bags to store food in because it's, you know, very space saving, but I would never heat up anything in a Ziploc bag, okay? So, and yes, we do allow for microwaves, okay? So again, we're all about making this work in a modern lifestyle, and there's a lot of people out there that would say that microwaves are horrible. And we say there's a lot of research and science that shows that they're not horrible, because microwaves basically heat up water molecules and make them vibrate, and then that heats up everything else around it. All right, so yeah, in an ideal world, maybe we wouldn't have any electronics whatsoever, but we're trying to make this work in a modern lifestyle, so we have no problem reheating our food and liquids in a microwave. I think it's great, okay? All right, so we have other information, more detailed information in a video that's an oldie but a goodie. We call it Real Food Cooking and Food Prep Tips for Superhumans. We'll make sure to reference that and link to that. And so your next steps is to take this information from this video, let it all digest and sink in, and understand, go back through our values and understand like our values of simplicity and elegance and making this work in a modern lifestyle. We would start with the things that you use every single day, and that would mean knives, cookware, and utensils. Okay, and then you can start to move on to things like storage containers and kitchen gadgets, you know, and the stock pots and the instant pots and things like that. And so we've provided you with a nifty little checklist that you can use to check off as you go down, and we've listed it in order of priority of the things that you need to get, okay? And I think that's it. May the power of real food be with you. It's been an honor sitting here and talking to you guys today, all right? If you have any questions, just let us know.